Hi everyone, my name is Virginia Duan, also known as Mandarin Mama. I'm your host for the podcast, Noona ARMY Podcast, where we discuss the particular aspects of being a middle-aged BTS fan. Today, I have a special guest, Jeff Harry, and a lot of you might know him from my YouTube reaction channel, and apparently he's many people's biases. He's also gotten proposals. It's very exciting. And some people call him Oppa Jeff. And I will not, because that's weird. So, Jeff, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Jeff Harry. I run an organization called Rediscover Your Play, where we help people tap back into their inner child, because that is where we believe the answers lie. And I've been introduced to BTS for now, what, 2 months?
Yeah, about 2 months, I think, since March. Oh, no.
Oh, February.
February. Oh,
Early February. So a month.
Yeah.
A month. Yeah, I've been watching it for a month. I think it's been a month.
And you seemed pretty, today we're going to talk about like BTS's main thing about love yourself. And then, and you and I talked, I think several months ago, maybe in the fall, about like inner critics and inner beasts and how we can make friends with our inner beasts. In fact, you have like a whole talk on that. So could you tell us a little bit about like why BTS caught your eye, particularly in Cypher 4 with the I love myself.
Yeah.
And then how that connects to your talk on like making friends with your inner critic.
Yeah.
And how that can work together.
Ooh, so yummy. What was that song?
It's called Cypher 4.
Cypher 4. So in Cypher 4, they say, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. And then they say, I know myself, I know myself, I know myself. Which I feel like that is, at least in the first world, is like almost everything that you're trying to do to become self-actualized. You know, if you're trying to get grounded, it's a combination of figuring out like who you are and then being like, okay, I actually appreciate or love who I am. And the part that I find really fascinating with most people is, you know, we talk about like, oh, all these challenges to get in our way, but really the main tough person in your life is you, right?
Yeah.
That is the biggest challenge you have to deal with, the biggest person, the meanest person you have to deal with, because as you've heard so many times, if your friends talk to you the way you talk to you would not be friends with that person, right?
No, right? You'd be like, are we friends? Or do you hate me?
So I run a workshop where we actually first write down all of the mean things that are coming out that your inner critic says. And then we actually then identify what the inner critic sounds like, what the inner critic looks like, and what you would actually name your inner critic. Because the part that's interesting is once you provide a character to it and you recognize that that character, mine is Gargamel, my friend's inner critic is named as Tila Tequila, you know, just like these you start to recognize these ridiculous characters that you needed when you were like maybe 10 or 15, you don't really need now, as they're like saying still horrible things to you, like, yeah, you're never going to amount to anything, and no one wants to listen to you, and, you know, no one cares what you have to say, don't post this thing because people just think you're stupid. Like, as you're stating these and putting these out here and sharing them with other people, you start to realize, you're like, oh, that's not me. Like, that's not me at all. People do care about me. You know, is this, and you start to ask and start challenging your inner critic and being like, is this true? Is this not true? And that's probably the best thing you can do, because you put the inner critic out in the light, and then all of a sudden that person or that voice starts to fade away. Yeah.
Well, because you and I went through this in the fall, I think, and because Jeff, the reason why I even have a podcast and the reason why I am doing YouTube reactions is actually because of Jeff. I don't know if any of you people know that. And I think I told this to you.
Oh, I didn't know.
Because I think, so Jeff and I know each other from the blogging circuit, where we attend this conference called Mom 2.0. And I had seen him several years. And our mutual friend had introduced us several years ago. And I was like, oh, he's so cool. I'm totally not cool enough to be his friend. and I was like, he's so funny. He's so cool with the like bow tie and like so smart and so engaging. And I was just like, well, I guess I'll just wave to him. I didn't want to be like, try to make you be my friend or anything. And then, was it this last year?
Yeah.
This last year?
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of alcohol involved. It must have been. And then we hit it off, right? And which I knew we would.
I also felt the same way towards you. I was just like, she doesn't like me at all. She must hate me.
No, I loved you. I thought you were so awesome.
What am I even doing here? This is a mom blog conference. I'm not a mom.
Or a blog, I guess. But yeah, and so, yeah, we hit it off. And then one day you like either texted me or called me, I forget, and you're like, hey, what are you doing with your platform? Like, why aren't you talking?
I think we were Facebook messaging each other.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was. And he was like, hey, you should do YouTube, or you should do videos, you should do stuff.
Yeah, I was just like, your stuff is hilarious and you're super dope. And more people should hear more from you. That's what I think I said.
Oh, well, yes. Stop it some more. But I was like, that's okay. But then you Goodwill Hunting me. So for those of you who haven't seen Goodwill Hunting or like are not of my generation, Goodwill Hunting, there's a scene where Ben Affleck and Matt Damon are like drinking beer and looking at a construction site on their truck, and Matt Damon's character is like, they offered me this like fancy job and I'm not going to take it because I'm not going to sell out. I don't need money. Who needs money?
And Matt Damon's like a genius, right? He's
a total genius.
Savant.
And Ben Affleck was like, fuck you. And he's like, wait, what? He's like, do you know how much I hope every day when I go to your house to pick you up that you don't even show up? You don't even have to say goodbye to me. I just hope you're not there. Because everyone wants to get out of this stupid neighborhood. And everyone would kill for your opportunity. And you're just like, oh, I don't want it. and I realized, like, the things that I didn't think were a big deal, or I thought, because, you constantly compare yourself to other people, like, oh, and I feel like I do a pretty good job of not comparing myself to other people. But it's inevitable. You can't help but do so. And you were like, well, you got to attend all these cool premieres. You get to interview people. You're being published. Like, people would kill for that. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I would have killed for this, like, even a year or two ago. Like, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. And so I think that was very helpful. And we were working through the inner critic. Mine's named Chad.
Chad. Oh, Chad. What are some of the things that Chad usually says to you or used to say to you?
Well, it still does. I just ignore him more. But like, one of the big ones was no one cares what I think about BTS. There's so many things about BTS out there already. There's so many voices. There's so many like music critics writing about them. They're on every channel. There's like huge reactors. No one looks like me who's reacting to them. And no one cares what some middle-aged Asian lady is gonna say about BTS. And I guess it's not true. Because
you've proven that it's not true.
Oh yeah. But I think I was surprised because at the end of last year, I think I'd started writing more and more articles about BTS because I was just like, well, I'm just gonna. And someone, a writer who I did not know through the internet was Googling, am I normal for loving BTS even though I'm old? Or something, or like a middle-aged BTS fan or something. Yeah. And she happened upon a few of my posts.
Wow.
And then she emailed me sent me like this amazing like email, and I was like, oh my god! And then I was so inspired by her that I wrote like a guide to being a middle-aged BTS fan. And then from then on, it just kind of snowballed because the response to that was really big, and or big for me. I don't know about like big, huge, but so it was, and yeah. So I think I feel more like, okay, I guess there is a space for me, and I don't know that I will be ever like a huge space, but I don't know. Who knows, right? Like, and yeah. So anyway, so this is the long way of saying that part of it was also just like making friends with the inner critic, and then that's one way to love myself, right? Like to say like, hey, I'm a legitimate voice. It's not everybody's voice, and not everybody might care about it, but I have this platform, and I'm going to use it.
Yeah, I think there's something powerful about and I think it's powerful in the sense of them saying, I know myself, like I know I like this, and now I know that I want to share this. And I'm going to love it, even though sometimes I don't love myself. I still am going to love myself by putting this out here.
Yeah.
That's the risk. The risk is like, I might put it out here and get rejected, right? And that is super powerful for someone of any age to hear, let alone like a majority of their audience, which is that generation that has to go through so much more comparison and FOMO than we ever had.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like we didn't I didn't need to post everything. I met people at the mall, you know, like that was like, that's my world. Their world is like, everything has to be so exciting all the time. Even though they're teenagers, they can't always be doing exciting things the whole time. So
I'm pretty sure nothing exciting ever happened to me as a teenager.
When I listen to their conversations, when I listen to my nephew, he's 16's conversations, I'm like, oh, it's so boring. But like, you know, but they are like constantly feeling like they need to be influencers that are letting people know how amazing their lives are. So I think the part that also really resonated with me from a BTS standpoint is their music. Even the stuff I've heard that's been earlier, you can tell they're trying to figure out how to answer the question of like, who am I? And what do I want to say? While when I think of most pop artists now, what they want to produce is the same crap that's always sold. That where you brag about yourself the whole time, or you talk about love and how it's crushed you, but not really. You know, like you're just looking for viral videos or viral songs, you know, using like old beats that like we know about back in like the 80s and 90s. You're like, dude, I just listened to a Rocky Balboa beat the other day that I'm like, dude, this is obviously from Rocky. Anyway, you know, so like, and the whole song was just about sex. And it was just like, I mean, you, like, I know you as an artist want to speak about more than that, but you can't break out of that because you know that is what the hand that feeds you. Right? And because they've been able to transcend K-pop and been able to transcend something more, they're like, okay, well, why don't I use this as a platform to say something really powerful, but also not from a place of like, here's some advice, but more like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm putting it back out there anyway. And that is, I think, the part that I think is fascinating to watch them grow, as you see with each and every song or, you know, lyric that they write, you know?
Yeah. And I think part of the interesting thing to me is because we're like 15 to 20 years older than them, a lot of the things that they're saying, I would say like the majority of the things that they have talked about or have spoken about, I'm like, yeah, I know this.
Right.
It's nothing like, and I don't mean this in like a patronizing way. It's just more like, they're not saying anything particularly new, but they're saying it in a way that people can because of their fandom, can accept. And perhaps for some people in their generation, it is the first time that they've heard
Absolutely.
it. Or even our generation. It doesn't matter what generation, right? But like, I find it, I think that's why they resonated with me so much. It's like, oh, like I feel like at some point, like you just get to a certain age where no one is actually telling you anything new.
Yep.
Like you get to that point in like church or like blogging or business, but it's not about new. It's about like, does it sink in?
Yep.
Or is it presented in a way where you can finally, and depending on where you are at the time you consume it, like, are you in a place to receive that message?
Right.
So that's what I find so interesting, I find it so powerful. I'm to this day I'm going to regret till the end of my life, like not being able to be in an arena full of like 50, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 people screaming, I love myself.
All right.
Altogether. Like, can you imagine
Well, you might have to create that for yourself. Hello, let's go. You do a talk. Imagine if you did a talk for like 1,000 people, which easily you will definitely do. And you got people to like just stand up and do that part. That's the part that's so powerful for me, is because like how many songs are speaking to certain generations that are communicating that message. You and I probably hear that message all the time from like toxic positivity, guru, are you ready to start the day? This is how you're going to start the day. You got to make your bed. And then after you make your bed, then you got to, and then make sure to do a list of all these things. And look at how I coordinate all my social media. And it's like, oh, you're just too perfect for me.
Right.
Just too perfect. Yeah. And the message of like, I love myself in all of my okayness, as my friend Leslie Liu says, like she's like, I'm not a perfectionist. I'm an okayist, meaning like I'm okay just with what I'm making, and I think people in our generation are trying to like believe that we by now should have figured out life or solved it,
Right.
And then the people I resonate with, like you and Liz, are people that are like, I'm just figuring this out as I go along. I don't know what I'm doing, but I have the humility to at least admit that. While you see so many people that are coming from a very insecure place that are like, this is what you got to do, and these are the 3 things you got to do in order to be successful. And you can tell, you can hear it in their voice, and it's like, ugh, like, you don't even believe this as your pitch. I think that's what I'm saying from the music standpoint, is like, they are speaking from a humble, I don't know what we're doing, but we're figuring it out place. As opposed to the insecure, is this what you want? Do you want more songs about sex and money and like, what else do you want? Because I can give that to you. Because they're like, because you're reaching, it's like you need validation as opposed to being like, I know myself, I've validated what I want to say, and I'll put it out here and like, take it or leave it. This is who I am. So and that's the part that I think resonates most with me, with you, is so brutally honest and hilarious in your way of showing up that it gives other people permission to also do that.
Well, thank you. That's what I've been trying to do. To like, ultimately, I really just want people to not feel alone in whatever they're going through. So whether it's like teaching their kids Chinese and like realizing that it's mostly chaos and I just scream at them in Chinese, so maybe they'll learn Chinese that way. Or, not feeling as if they're the only older BTS fan. Like, even something as small as that, right? Like,
but I don't think any of that is small. It's never small. I'm even reading some of that, maybe this book, Belonging by Radha Argawal. Do you know Daybreakers?
It sounds familiar.
So Daybreakers is this morning dance party.
Oh, really?
that she created. Yeah, she created this morning dance party because she used to, in her 30s, she would go to clubs and bars all the time. And she'd be like, what am I doing? I black out. I talk to people about stupid stuff that I don't really care about. And she's like, and the only reason I'm here is to connect and build community, and none of that's happening. So she and a bunch of friends started doing, like, in their basement or whatever it is, in the morning they would do like yoga and dance parties. And they kept doing them. And then they rented out a club at like 8 a.m., which is super cheap because there's no one renting out clubs at 8 a.m. And they would do yoga at 7 a.m. and then they would dance from 8 to like 9:30. And they did this in New York. And it became so popular. They do it once a month. And became so popular, it expanded to 25 different cities.
Wow. And
then they started expanding to other countries. So, and it's just like this morning dance party. That's all it is. It's just a morning dance party with no alcohol. You know, you shouldn't be on drugs when you show up and everything like that. But anyway, she was talking about like community and how, you know, ultimately what people want to feel is they don't want to feel alone. And I think she said this, I was just reading this, but she was just like, 1 in 4 people consider themselves not able to confide in anybody.
Oh, that's sad.
I know. And that's like increased with the Instagram generation. And what is it? 1 in 4 Americans report that they have 0 friends to confide in and discuss important matters with. Right?
That makes me so sad.
And then I learned this in positive psychology, but she mentioned it also, like another study found that having weak social ties is harmful to your health as much as being an alcoholic and twice as harmful as being obese.
Really?
So like even in this like virtual way, just feeling connected with someone because someone is giving you permission to like something that you didn't think you could like is huge. And then when they write a comment, they're like, thank you so much for doing this. And you write them back and you're like, oh, I'm so glad because that really helps me. And then they're like, oh, that really helps me. All of a sudden now you're like, that's a connection. Like something that is going to keep me going so that even though it's just about BTS or it's just a song, whatever, it then it has a domino effect to do other things. You're like, well, maybe I should create something. Look how happy she is creating this. So I should take a risk. And like, that's the whole point. That's why I'm so into play, because play really is like someone giving you permission to be ridiculous and be silly. And then it gives another person permission, another person. And then all of a sudden everyone is like jumping up saying, I love myself. I love myself. like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. Make that a meme. I'm not alone.
You know, you ask people to do it and they just might. But yeah, and you know, one of the things that I really appreciate about like the Love Yourself arc is that it found me when I found it when I was really, really struggling with my identity as like a mom, as a creative person, as a writer. And that's one of the main reasons that drew me into BTS. Like, of course, like the music is important because let's be real, if it doesn't sound good, then I don't really care what it's talking about.
That's true.
Or if it's not packaged well, you can forgive, like they don't have to be good dancers, but like that helps. And, so all of that is
they
like,
don't have to be sexy, but you know, that six pack does not hard. It's great to look at,
right? You know, like a six pack can help. A six pack is either social lubrication or something else.
At least it's a great thing to use when the washer breaks. You know,
right.
You get those washboard abs.
But I mean, I'd like to say that I also have abs. It's just hidden. It's just very safely.
They're in my cooler. They're in my igloo cooler.
Right. There's just a lot of padding. But yeah, but I feel like one of the things that I've always appreciated about BTS is they're from the very beginning, their creator, the their main producer, the guy who like formed the group. They call him Bang PD, and he told them that I want you to write songs that tell your story.
Mm-hmm.
So because they wrote their own songs, that's why at the first few albums was about school and like unrequited love and like, you know, they're kind of horny teenagers, like, you know, because
that's where they're at, right? That's
right.
Where they're at.
But then they were also like, hey, they're worried about not having dreams. They're worried about, you know, they want big house, big car, big rings, big things, you know, like that. That's one of their like repeat phrases that they keep calling back to, like, and they just, yeah. So I think that's what's always appealed to me about them, because they're writing about the things that they know, and
yeah,
and they always tell writers, write about what you know,
right,
and that's why I feel like they do know themselves, and then because then they were struggling with like, oh well, people tell me that I'm this or that, am I an idol, am I an artist, am I a rapper, am I a singer, like what am I? Am I this persona? Am I this other thing? And like when they all sing about the inner beast or inner critic, like they feel like that's what they call their monster, right? That there's multiple songs that they have about it. They're afraid of showing themselves because they're a monster inside. And I feel like that's part of what loving yourself is, right? Looking deep into your like ugly parts, whether you call it your inner critic, like your inner beast, like your like Jekyll and Hyde type of thing. Like it's looking at that and loving that part also. Maybe not loving how it lashes out or whatever, but just saying, no, that's a part of me that, and you can seek healing, like you can seek therapy, you might need medicine, you might need like all sorts of support, right? But like that is part of you, and it's part of your story, and that's formed who you are.
Right.
Who I am, and part of loving yourself is accepting that.
Yeah, I love the phrase of like, you can have fear in your car, just don't have it in the front seat, you know? And it's just this idea of like, because you still need fear. Like fear is there to protect you sometimes from doing really stupid stuff. But it's like, but it doesn't need to be your driver, and it doesn't need to be, you don't need to be, listen, you could just put it in the back seat and have it just hang out back there and be like, okay, I hear what you have to say. Thank you for your input. Okay, I'm still gonna post it. You know,
right.
You know, and I think that part is crucial. I think the other part that I find really interesting is I saw this quote recently. I don't know where it is. I'll find it at some point. But it was, what were they saying? They were like, before you try to rush back to your normal life, ask yourself what you actually want to rush back to in your normal life. Because there's like this desire right now, right, in this situation where it's just like, I wish things could just go back to normal, right? But then was that normal something you really liked? You know? Right. Was that just something that like you were familiar with? And this time is a really great opportunity for us to get to know ourselves, right? And us to love ourselves. But it's also like getting to know yourself is hard. It's rough. It's, you know, and trust me, there's a lot of times where I'm like, oh my gosh, bad thoughts are coming. What's on Netflix? Let me find out about the Tiger King, because the Tiger King is going to provide me sustenance. And then afterwards, after I've eaten my Cheetos, which is the Tiger King in my situation, then I'm back to being like, oh, here come these thoughts again. Oh gosh. And I think what I really love about BTS is that they know themselves and also have the humility to be like, and also I'm just trying to figure this out. So I don't really know, you know, and I'm going to question it in a moment. I'm going to question where I just was at just a minute ago. And they're doing it publicly for everyone to see, right? And most people do this privately, and most people don't ever do it. Like they kind of just live this like standard life, you know, make sure my 401k is full. And
I mean, that's important. That's important.
I don't get me wrong. It's just like you do all these things because this is what you're told is going to please you. And then as what Jim Carrey said, he's like, I wish everyone was rich and famous like me. because then they would realize that all the stuff that you get with this is not what you want. And it's like, you know, it's just like, you really got to know what it isn't that actually brings you that love, happiness, and that gratification that you desire. You know, that you're not chasing the wrong things.
Yeah. And then it's also, I feel like the reason why, it's not just through their music, because they actually interact a lot with their fans. They have this platform called V Live or V App, and it's not their platform, but a lot of K-pop stars use it. And it's like it's like YouTube Live or like Periscope, where they go live and people can watch them and like send hearts and, you know, Facebook Live, whatever, any type of live platform. But it's big enough to sustain like millions. Like they get to the point where like even one of them live streaming gets like 1 million people.
Wow!
In Korea time, right? Like you're like, but you know, but we watch them. We see them go from like kind of really insecure rookies and like really trying really hard and people shitting on them, and they didn't have dressing rooms. They weren't given dressing rooms. They had to practice in the hallways of shows, you know, and people treated them like crap, you know, which I'm not saying that they were unique in that. I mean, I think that's just part of the industry that if you weren't like a big group, then they would treat you like crap. But just how that could have changed them into like, they could have been people who also treated people like crap because they're like, hey, that's the industry. That's how it works.
Industry, yeah, exactly. You know? I dealt with that trauma, so now I'm going to pass that trauma on.
Right. But they choose to break the cycle. So you see interview after interview of like photographers, makeup artists, like anyone who's ever like met them, touched them, whatever, right? And they're like, they are the nicest, kindest, most humble people. That they will go out of their way to thank you. They're like, why are they bowing to us? We're like, you know, or like, why are they? And they're just like so humble. And so like they'll reach out to friends who maybe they hear is having a hard time. And they'll say, hey, I don't mean to be rude or whatever. But like, so Jin met one of the guys, this rapper named Snoopy, and he's the one who discovered RM and told like big hit about RM. And that's how they became BTS, right? But he heard that Sleepy was having money troubles or like fights with his agency about money. And so Jin was with Sleepy on this like Survivor type show. And so he reached out. And so Sleepy is older than Jin, and then also has been in the industry longer. And so it kind of breaks a lot of taboos to like reach out to someone who's older than you, right? Offer money, right? And it's an Asian society, so it's like very. He's like, hey, I don't want you to take this in an insulting way, but I heard you're having like a fight with your company, and if you need help monetarily, I can help you. Wow. Right? And if he's not saying this to get any, it doesn't help him, right? It doesn't help Jin, right? But like, and he doesn't ever expect someone to like tell other people about this, right? You know, like, so he's not doing it for clout or anything, you know, but those are the type of people they are, you know, and like, and that to see that they have chosen to repay evil with kindness and like humility, and like to learn from that, to break that cycle, to say, hey, no, this is another way you can be. And again, I'm not saying that other K-pop artists are like not assholes, right? I'm obviously a BTS fan, and I stand them, and I follow them, right? So, but I feel like it's given me a lot of examples that even though I'm older and obviously know how to treat people kindly with respect, but like even how they treat fans who may have liked them at some point, but then no longer like them. Like Jungkook has said before, like, hey, thank you to the fans who supported us at the beginning and are still supporting us now, like the day ones, right? But then he's like, but also thank you to fans who liked us for a moment, and then we no longer served their purpose. Wow. And he's like, thank you, because you also brought us to where we are today. So I thank you for any amount of time you spent with me. And that actually changed a lot of how I view my readers and like, I guess my small contingent of followers. Like, because for a long time I would be like, hey, like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like I'm no longer talking about Chinese exclusively. Yeah. But then I realized like, no, that's the wrong attitude. So now I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the amount of time that they spent with me, however small. you know, because every part of their interaction helped me get to where I am, and I'm actually very happy.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so transcendent.
Right? Like, and he was like 21 when he said that. I was not that like he's 22 now, so he's not that much older. But like when I was 21, I was not about that.
I was not talking about that. I was like, please like me all the time, right? Please.
I'd be like, you horrible people, why don't you see me for the genius that I am?
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's where that it comes down to the feeling grounded, feeling like you understand who you are, and feeling like, if you leave, I'll still be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can speak from that standpoint. And something that came up for me, and just as you were talking, because I was also like, why do they have so many hit songs? And I was like, oh, I get it. It's because not only are they writing their own stories, but they're willing to take a risk in writing something brand new, even if people don't like it. And I compare that to the one-hit wonders that you have. Like, their whole goal was to become rich and famous, right? So then they write this one-hit wonder, their Can't Touch This, or whatever the song it is that they have, right?
I mean, MC Hammer also had Bumps in the Hump.
I didn't have the bumps. It was Can't Touch, or Ice Ice Baby, or whatever the song. Everyone had it, right? But then once they have it, then they're done. Then they're like, I'm good. Like, they try a little bit, but they're now famous, and they're like, I'm going to ride this song forever. And I remember seeing like young MC perform like 5 years ago, and I was like, I didn't even know you were still alive. But he was performing at like some corporate event or something like that. I was like, oh my gosh, look at him. And it's because they have chosen to just be like, I don't want to create anything brand new anymore. Or maybe I did, but I didn't really want to take that risk to go vulnerable again. I'm just going to ride out the same thing, even though that's not me anymore. You know, like, I know MC Hammer for a fact hates singing Can't Touch This, right? Like, he's been communicating a lot of time. People are like, can you do this? And it's like, no, like, that's not who I am. But he also knows that that's his moneymaker, and he doesn't create anything else that one would like. Right?
I mean, too legit to quit.
Too legit to quit. He doesn't do it a lot, though.
But isn't that the, like, Oakland A's song?
Or Montel Jordan with "This Is How We Do It." You know, like, so for them, they are constantly trying to push themselves to create something else, and almost let go of whatever majestic, amazing creation they've done in the past. And it kind of reminds me, I mean, this is a bit of a reach, but it kind of reminds me of those Buddhist monks who work on those sand designs like for a whole month, and then no one gets to see it. They don't take photos and post it on Instagram. They literally work on it until it's so beautiful, and then they're willing to put it outside and have the wind just blow it away, almost like it never existed.
Dude.
And it's like,
that's not a metaphor for existence.
Like, can you do that? Can we do that?
Nope.
You know?
Nope. I'm telling you right now, nope.
But that is the humility that they are partly doing when they choose to be like, oh, we don't sing that anymore. That's not who we are anymore, but we are now creating something new. And hopefully you'll be on the ride with us. But if you're not, then thank you for the time that you spent with us, which is so, like, deep, dude. It's so, like, you know, mature of someone.
It is. And then, like, even, well, I mean, to be fair, they do have a good team. So they talk about how, like, it's like a songwriting camp all the time. So they're always writing, they're always submitting lyrics. They're kind of competing as a team to, like, see who gets their lyrics in, who gets the melody. They work with a bunch of producers. So it's always, they say it's like a year-round song camp. Songwriting camp. Because you know that's how songs are written now, right? Like, they have, like, even in the Western industry, like, they'll bring up, like, 30 songwriters, lyricists, and, like, producers, and then, like, put them in a room for all day, like, for, like, 3 days, like a weekend. And then they'll just bang out shit. So, like,
Wow.
Kanye West did that, like did a whole bunch of sessions with like Paul McCartney. And like, so it became one of his albums or whatever. Like, so like snippets of things. So that's a lot of how songs get written now, is by collaboration. That's why you see like 10 names on a song. Right? And so they do that a lot now within their own big hit staff and producers. And then they will also source out, like people will send them songs and they'll fix them or like change them to fit what they want. But the fact that they're just even secure enough that they're like, you could go the route of like, no, I don't want to use other people's words, or I don't want to use other people's beats, but that they're smart enough and humble enough to know like, no, it's not just a one person show. And the fact that there's 7 of them.
Yeah.
Like I meant to talk about this in my previous episode, but like, so did you see their Grammy performance?
I don't think
with Lil Nas X?
No.
Speaking of someone who has written a song for a long time. So Lil Nas X's song, Old Town Road, had
that guy. Yeah, I know that. Well, yeah.
Had like a bajillion remixes, right?
Right.
So BTS loved that song, especially RM. So RM did a remix with Lil Nas X called Soul Town Road. And so part of it was in like Korean and all this stuff. And because BTS weren't nominated for a Grammy, and they presented the year before, but Grammy wanted them, to bring their fans to watch, right? So they asked BTS to perform with Lil Nas X. And no one knew. People were hoping that they would get their own stage, but it was almost impossible because you really don't get to perform unless if you're nominated or whatever. But they were very willing to be on the Grammy stage for like maybe 45 seconds as almost background singers.
Wow.
Right? And then and the thing is, it could have just been RM because RM is the only feature on that song.
Right.
But he brings the whole group to perform. They bring the whole group. He shares the spotlight with them, and like and one of the things that I find very admirable about BTS is that their company has a policy of it's an all or nothing type of thing. You either get all 7 of them to endorse your product, or you get none of them.
Wow.
Whereas a lot of other K-pop groups, each individual people, there's more popular members. I mean, of course, right? Like that's just what happens. But no, they're like, no, it's all or none. You get all of us or 0 of us. And
that's also interesting because then it's not like a money grab where you're like, well, I'm just going to take whatever I want. It's just like we all have to agree.
Mm-hmm. And then everything they do, they just work together. And like even when they release their solo projects and their solo mixtapes and their solo songs, like things that they've written, they've even said like, hey, we are happy when you like our solo songs. Like, of course, we're happy when you buy it and chart it and like you help us break records. But we don't care as much about our individual effort as we care about our group effort.
Wow.
And that takes a lot of like, you have to know yourself really well. Because you know what? I'm going to be honest. Like, if my kids did something awesome and went viral and they became famous, of course I'd be happy because, 50% of my genetic makeup, clearly that's what got them there. But I'd be like, yo.
Like, I've been putting this in for a while. What about y'all? What about?
And they're my children. They came out of my body, right? And of course I'd be happy for them. But, like, I don't know if I'm secure or mature enough to say, like, no, that's what matters to me. So the good of the whole versus just myself. Right? But you have to know yourself really well.
Yeah, it's interesting. My friend Gary Ware, who's like an improv player, like improvisationalist, and teaches a lot about improv, would talk about how when you're doing improv, your goal is not be the funniest.
Oh,
like that's not your goal. Your one of your main goals is to make everyone else look good.
Interesting.
That's how a scene works the best, is when everyone is pushing the scene forward and doing whatever they can to help the other improv players. And when someone is trying to take over the scene and dominate it for themselves just to be funnier, even if, let's say, they are the funniest, it ruins the scene. It might help them, but it ruins it because everyone else has to move to the background. And that's the part that I think is really amazing. What they're doing is they're like, as long as we're supporting and helping others look good, you know, it helps everybody.
Yeah.
You have to be, it's tough because your ego wants to be like, well, I haven't been in the scene enough. I need to do something for me to stand out. But that actually destroys the chemistry in the play that makes the performance so great.
And then it requires a lot of trust.
So much trust. Because
you have to trust that everybody is actually trying to make everybody else look good, and not just themselves. But if everybody actually is making everyone else look good, then everybody looks good.
Yep.
Right? So it's like a counterintuitive kind of thing.
Yeah, I even talk about this in another workshop where there's something they refer to as the brilliant jerks, where a lot of companies hold on to brilliant jerks because that jerk brings in a lot of money. But the challenge with that is then it destroys the team.
Yeah.
The process. And what I think Simon Sinek talked about this from the Navy SEAL standpoint is they'd rather not have the most talented, most athletic, most physically fit Navy SEAL. Because if that person is not willing to work as a team, the team is done. So they'll take someone that is mediocre when it comes to shooting or mediocre when it comes to certain skills because they help the team work better together.
Wow.
And it's yeah.
And even a mediocre Navy SEAL is still like way better.
Because they're still amazing, but the team is the most important part and not the person. And I think what's really tough about American society is we so much talk about the individual.
Yeah.
And how we celebrate the individual. And then you see a group like this and it's like, well, even me when I was watching them, I was like, well, who's the leader? And you're like, oh, there's not really a leader. And it's like, no, but I need to know who's number one. And it was like, they kind of switch off. And that's just not a mentality that is embraced in America as much. Like, let's celebrate everybody as opposed to like, who's number one.
Right. And I feel like that's different than everyone gets a like participation trophy.
Yep.
Right. Because it's not saying that you show up and then like you get a trophy. It's like, no, you show up and you do the work and you make everyone look good. And that's what you get that trophy. Right. Like,
and when you think of any amazing presentation or performance or, you know, what have you, workshop, retreat, you know it goes really well when at the end of it, you're like, well, thank you so much for coming. And then they're like, no, thank you for hosting this. And you just keep thanking each other. Like, you don't know who gave to who, right? Because like the person on stage is like, I'm so happy that you showed up and are willing to listen to me. And the people in the audience are like, I'm so happy you showed up and were willing to share. It's like, oh, I feel like it's an equal exchange and there's no hierarchy there.
Yeah.
And that's like the magic I want to create more and more, man. That's
That's why BTS just sucks you in because it's not just the music. It like my husband doesn't get it. I mean, I think he gets it from like a purely like superficial standpoint. He's like, all right, that's cool. But like, it's not, it ultimately, the music is what brings you in, right? And you stay in because the music is good.
Right.
But what keeps you is the people, right? Because there's plenty of music out there that I consume that I like, that I enjoy. And I'm like, these are shit humans. Right? Like, I mean, for a really crass example, Harvey Weinstein and their company, right?
Oh, yeah.
Put out a lot of amazing movies, a lot of awesome products.
Yeah.
Real shit human.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
right. Brilliant work, right?
Yeah. And, you know, a predator, right? And one could argue that some people are like, oh, well, maybe he was able to create those products because he's an asshole.
Right.
But can you imagine, but flip it the other way around. Can you imagine the quality of work that would have happened if he weren't preying on the women, right? Like if they felt safe, can you imagine the performance that they would have given, you know? So I think it's like that. Like I feel like everything that they produce, like even if it's just like their lives talking about, there's lives of Jimin, and who's like, he's a total perfectionist and like would get really down on himself. And yeah, sometimes he'll hit a bad note, you know, like that's fine. He's a person, right? Like it's really hard to sing really high while you're dancing after you've already been singing and dancing for over an hour.
Yes.
Right? Like, come on. But he's released lives or like vlogs where he's just like, yeah, I'm really sad. You know, I feel like I've not done a good job. I'm not a good singer. I'm trying to improve. I don't know why, but you know, like, so if you watch their, they have three behind the scene, like tour movies, and then like 3 tour documentaries, and you just watch them, and you're just like, and you see them as people. You see how hard they work, and how, I mean, and again, this is not saying other people don't work hard, right? We're just talking about their story, right? This is not taking away from other people,
right?
And just how humble they are. They're all constantly thanking their staff and their stylists, because to put on a concert, we always glorify BTS because they're the ones like dancing and singing on stage, but that wouldn't have happened if the pyrotechnics people did. That's true. Or the lighting, or the sound, or like all the makeup, hair, all those people. Like, I think it's a crew of 180 people to help put on a concert. You know, like 180 people, and they thank them, and all their like album liner notes, they're always like, thank you so much to the staff, and every like acceptance speech that they do at an awards show, they've thanked, like, of course they always thank ARMY first, but then they're like, thank you to the hair and makeup stylists, like, thank you to the people who bring us our food, like, because we don't know how to do anything. like all I know, like Suga said, like, all I know how to do is sing and dance and make music. I know how to do absolutely nothing else. Like, and so the fact that I'm alive, other people have helped keep me alive. Like, he's like, I don't know. But you know, it's just that they see that they're just so. But you know, and I feel like you can say thank you and not mean it, and like you just, you know. But like the way that they thank people, sometimes like they're crying. And they're not that great of actors. and you know, but the reason why I include this on the love yourself portion is because I feel like so many of us are ungrateful and not thankful to people because we feel as if it takes away from us if we thank somebody. Mm-hmm. Like, we feel like, and that's because we're coming from a place of insecurity and smallness.
Yep.
And really, if we look at it, this is going to sound really cheesy, but one of the most influential episodes I've ever seen on TV was Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, where Will Smith gets it into his head that he's going to be like Uncle Phil and be a self-made man. Uh-huh. Doesn't accept any help, and doesn't, like, he's trying to do all these jobs, and like he's mad, and like he's trying to do it all on his own, and he can't do it, and he gets very upset, and Uncle Phil's like, you idiot, like, I'm not a self-made man. So many people have helped me. Mm-hmm. And you need to accept help in order to get somewhere. And you're not like lesser if you don't accept help. Mm-hmm. That's smart. And that's always stuck with me. Like, and so that's why I feel like it's important. If you know yourself, then you know that other people are part of your journey, right? Like, so I'm confident enough to say, like, hey, without you, I would not have been doing any of these things. Like, because I think even you had me guest on, like, we did a test Zoom, like of a recording or something, right? Like that made me a little bit more comfortable. Like, oh, it's possible, or like people like Brandy Riley, who is my like coach and mastermind person. Like for like I always shout her out because I would not be here without her. Right. I always shout out Liz, our friend Liz, because without her I would not be here, right? And it doesn't take away anything from that I've done, right? Like they didn't do things for me, but they also did things for me. So, but I feel like that is part of the love yourself message, because you have to know where you come from. You have to know all the people who helped form you.
Right.
And if you love yourself and you know yourself well enough, then it doesn't take away anything from you to recognize the people who helped you get where you are.
Which then I think because the story of the self-made person is such the American entrepreneurial, the guy story of like, I pulled myself up from my own bootstraps type thing, which then is driven solely on ego, because it's like, I did it. So I did it so you can do it, but you'll have to do it just like how I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And to actually acknowledge all the people that supported you, a part of you does have to be like, oh, I'm not here if they don't exist, which then is tough for some people to embrace that, because I think of like privilege and how if you ask a lot of people that are in positions of power right now and be like, dude, do you recognize your privilege as to why you are where you're at? A lot of people will be like, what are you talking about? I did this all by myself. And for them to acknowledge that privilege, they would have a mental breakdown, because they built this whole story on this house of cards where, like, I got into school because I deserved to. I got this job because I deserved to. I got this position, or I'm CEO because I deserve to. And that is on a fragile, like, foundation.
But that's what America's founded on, right? America is founded on the idea that we're self-made, that we're independent, but really we're founded on rape, genocide, and slavery, right? Like, of course, we stole land. We didn't honor treaties.
Right. We stole land, then we brought more people to help build our wealth.
For free. Killed millions of them. We brought
more people and we paid them very low, to build our railroads and all this other stuff. Like, it's just like, it's this perpetual lie that we've been saying.
But it's because America doesn't know its history.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't know itself, and therefore it cannot love itself because what it knows is a lie.
I agree with you on that.
So.
Wait, finish that last part, as I didn't hear that.
Oh, because what we think we know is a lie.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't take away from like the amazing things that happened.
Yep.
But it also doesn't make it like this fake thing.
It doesn't embrace the whole complexity of it.
Right.
And maybe that's the challenge with people, is like, how do you, like in that movie Pixar, the Inside Out movie, where they have two emotions at the same time at the end? It's just, how can both exist? How can I both feel like I've done so much in my life that I can be really proud of and really proud of myself, and also recognize that all these people helped me do this?
Right.
Because a lot of times we believe in this black and white, yes, no, win, lose sort of mentality, when it's like, it's more complicated than that.
Right.
And that's the part that I think they bring a certain level of complexity to a pop music world that people are not usually used to.
Yes. And it's refreshing. Not that there's no place for like songs about sex and like love, and
we have so many of that.
But there's just so many. Like, there's just so many. And most of it's not good.
It's the same stuff. So I will say one takeaway I took from this, which I really think is an important message that I need to also keep telling myself, is even if someone is even if so many people are creating stuff that you think you Well, it's already been created, so I don't feel like I don't like. Who wants to hear my voice? It's like, yes, other people have created it, but you haven't created it, so it's definitely going to be from a different perspective, and it's definitely going to open up. I mean, what is it? There's almost 8 billion people in the world. Like, there's definitely some people that are going to resonate and see that for you. And even if it's only a few thousand people, that's still a lot of people, man. You know? And I think a lot of times we think, well, if it's not going to be 1 million people, then I'm nobody. And it's like, just think of your friends, like your friends are impacting just a few people, but they are changing lives.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This is probably one of our longer podcasts, so thank you for listening and sticking with us. And maybe Jeff will have his own podcast, and then we can promote his podcast, because I would certainly listen to your podcast. All right. So thank you so much, everyone. Please like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, or like and subscribe on the podcast, however that works. I always forget. All right. Thanks so much, and have a great day. Bye.
Thanks for having me. See ya.